15 fastest and most terrible bomber aircraft in the world. Bombers are actually a dying breed. We will see less and less of them as time goes by. They were a concept which made sense at a time when cruise missiles and ballistic missiles were still on the drawing board. That was a time when a manned bomber carrying the missiles and dropping them on the war zone made sense. World War I and II saw its share of bombers. Even the Iraq War in the early 90s saw bombers, but they would defy practicality if still in use. I mean, why would you risk a man flying a bomber, losing his life to a surface-to-air missile? I understand stealth bombers, but still. Doesn't make sense, right? Also, they are not designed for dogfights like the ones we saw in the movie Top Gun. The newest version is the fighter-bomber hybrids, which further corroborate my point of a standalone bomber being history. Speed-wise, bombers will be falling a bit behind the fastest military aircraft, but way behind the fastest military drones. There, you have one more reason for bombers being history. So, then why are we discussing them? Well, for what they existed, and when they existed they were some really cool aircraft and fast ones too. Many are still in operation. Let's take a look at them from the fastest to the relatively slower ones. Number 1. XB-70 Valkyrie. The XB-70 Valkyrie was to be christened as the B-70 at the end of its testing and development phase, and would have replaced the aging B-52 bombers. It could do a stellar Mach 3+, and was directly in the SR-71's bracket. However, for its role as a bomber it had to be high-flying and fast, so as to be out of reach of any Soviet interceptors. In fact, in its expected parameters, no interceptor in the Soviet arsenal could have caught it. But a new development of the surface-to-air missile by the Soviet in the late 50s, same time as XB-70's development, put a question mark on the XB's survivability. So changing course, it was decided to make it low-flying, but that restricted its use, and was costlier than using the B-52 for the same purpose. So in the end, they had to pull the plug on the XB-70. History is witness to the fact that this was one well-discussed and media-covered aircraft. The XB-70 had massive 6 engines, and that was unparalleled in the 50s. Following the surface-to-air missiles, the development of the first ICBM by the Soviets ensured that any lingering thoughts of using the XB-70 were closed for good. And that is what happened. Only 2 were ever built, and one of them adorns the Edwards Air Force Base. Number 2. Sukhoi T-4. This was one bomber which was being developed by Sukhoi in response to the XB-70. Its design won despite competing models from Tupolev and Yakovlev. Ironically, this aircraft which was supposed to take on the XB-70 met the same fate as the XB. Although 4 were produced for testing, it never took off and the program was officially closed down in 1975. When compared with the XB, the T-4 was less famous just because of differing priorities at that time. This is obvious from the fact that while XB-70 still has a strong recall, not many know much about the T-4. The T-4 was expected to cruise at Mach 3, and not just do spurts of Mach 3. This requirement meant a lot of design research, testing and development had to follow. Unlike the XB which went down due to the alleged enemy getting better, this one went due to internal politics and competition from Tu-22M. Interestingly, the Tu-22M still survives, and is one of the strategic bombers of Russia. Number 3. F-111 Aardvark. The F-111 Aardvark was one of the earliest fighter-bomber aircraft bringing to light the limited use of an aircraft with only a bomber role. It was replacing the B-58 which was supposed to be a full-fledged bomber. The aircraft had multiple roles like attack, fighting, reconnaissance, and nuclear bombing. This was the first aircraft to sport the variable sweep wings which can also be seen in the picture. The F-111 had later versions, the 111A and 111B, all intended for high penetration at low altitude. The other pioneering introduction in the F-111 was the automated terrain following radar which allowed it to fly at a high speed at low altitude. It could achieve a top speed of Mach 1.2 at low altitude, which was a record of the time considering no other aircraft could go supersonic at lower altitudes. The F-111 served both the American and Australian Air Force, and the Australian Air Force was the last to retire it in 2010. Number 4. Sukhoi Su-35. The Su-35 is one of the most advanced fighter bombers in Russia's arsenal. It is a fourth-generation fighter seeing 4 decades of development over one of the first fighter bombers, the Su-24. In many cases, it is pitched as being better than the American F-35. The F-35, however, is a fifth-generation fighter. The Su-35 was actually made for the export market though. A bulk of them serve the Russians, as of now. Many countries have evinced interest and 14 have already been sold. Number 5. Sukhoi Su-24M. The Sukhoi Su-24M was the earliest fighter-bomber aircraft in the Russian arsenal, bringing to light the aspect of obsoleteness of a bomber-alone aircraft. It was much like the F-111 for the Americans. With their own anti-aircraft missiles, the Russians understood the need for a fighter-cum-bomber aircraft. In that sense, Su-24M was one of the first models built for both. It was also one of the first Russian aircraft carrying an integrated navigation and attack system. This aircraft came into service in 1974 with the Russian Air Force, and still continues to serve the other nations operating it. The Su-24, initially, was capable of achieving a speed of Mach 2.18 at high altitudes. However, the main operational need of the aircraft was to fly low for its bomber and fighter capability. Having taken that into account, some modifications were brought in which limited the high-altitude speed to Mach 1.6. That, however, did not alter the operational capability of the Su-24M. Number 6. Tupolev Tu-160 Blackjack. This one I would like to call Mr. Putin's new toy, designed to trample the nerves of the British, if not NATO, that is. Those who had read the article on the fastest commercial aircraft would have been introduced to the Tupolev in the passenger version. That was the base for the military version. However, the Blackjack comes after multiple iterations of the military one and now in operation. The resemblance to the passenger version still continues. Why were we talking about the British in particular? Well, the fastest fighter aircraft that the British have is the Typhoon, which can do a top speed of Mach 2. So it can hardly catch up with the Tupolev if there is a decent distance between the two. Not only that, but also the Tupolev can fly farther than the Typhoon without refueling, so you see the point? Whenever Russia feels like teasing a NATO nation, they will just send the Tupolev near shore of the British to trigger a response and then continue laughing at the response till the Tupolev lands back safely. A bit of a tease, isn't it? Number 7. Tupolev Tu-22M backfire. The Tupolev Tu-22M forms part of the strategic bomber group of Russia, the other two being Tu-160 and Tu-95. The 22M was developed from the Tu-22, which in turn had direct roots in the passenger version Tu-144. Before the Tu-160, this was one of the fastest bombers in the Russian arsenal. The Tu-22, predecessor of 22M, was fraught with numerous issues. At the time Tupolev was awaiting government go-ahead for the production of 22M, it was facing stiff competition from the Sukhoi, which was developing the T-4. This was covered under T-4 also. However, many aspects weighed in favor of the 22M, including face-saving in terms of the failed Tu-22 aircraft, leading to the approval of the 22M as an improvement and closure of the T-4 program. Number 8. Rockwell B-1 Lancer. The Rockwell B-1 Lancer is a supersonic variable sweep wing, heavy bomber used by the United States Air Force. It is commonly called the Bone from B-1. It is one of 3 strategic bombers in the U.S. Air Force fleet as of 2021, the other 2 being the B-2 Spirit and the B-52 Stratofortress. The B-1 was first envisioned in the 1960s as a platform that would combine the Mach 2 speed of the B-58 Hustler with the range and payload of the B-52, and was meant to ultimately replace both bombers. After a long series of studies, Rockwell International, now part of Boeing, won the design contest for what emerged as the B-1A. This version had a top speed of Mach 2.2 at high altitude, and the capability of flying for long distances at Mach 0.85 at very low altitudes. The combination of the high cost of the aircraft, the introduction of the AGM-86 cruise missile that flew the same basic speed and distance, and early work on the stealth bomber all significantly reduced the need for the B-1. This led to the program being cancelled in 1977, after the B-1A prototypes had been built. Number 9. Sukhoi Su-34. The Su-34 is the next generation of fighter bombers. It was introduced as late as 2014 and continues to be in service. The Su-34, incidentally, is expected to replace two aircraft from this list. They are the Su-24 fighter aircraft and Tupolev Tu-22M bomber. The Su-34 also boasts of an improved flight range as compared to the Su-24. The ongoing Syria war saw the Su-34 as one of the newest breed of fighter bombers entering the conflict. Number 10. Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II. The F-35 is a fifth-generation stealth multi-role fighter aircraft. It is one aircraft which generated a lot of interest globally, and yet saw it undergo many development changes and therefore put a question mark on its capabilities. The aspect of not ironing out the flaws before going into production saw earlier models being plagued with issues, corrections, and recorrection. Because of this, the F-35 till date remains the costliest program of any kind for American defense. At one point, the cost incurred on the program had far outgrown the rationale to kill it, and hence development continued despite criticism from all quarters. The F-35 had three variants: the F-35A for conventional takeoff and landing, F-35B for short takeoff and vertical landing, and the F-35C for carrier-based landing and takeoff. The Russian claims on the Su-35, a fourth-generation fighter, being operationally better than the F-35, had raised too many eyebrows in the American contingent. If the internal bashing was not enough, a Russian analysis was the last that Lockheed was looking forward to, and the result was Lockheed's own report card claiming that the F-35 was better than most aircraft, barring the F-22 Raptor. History will remember this aircraft as one of the most spoken about. Number 11. CNH-6, Mach 0.97. Delivery of the Tu-16 to China began in 1958, and a license production agreement with the USSR was signed in the late 1950s. Xi'an Aircraft Industrial Corporation, XAC, manufactured aircraft at Xi'an as the H-6. The first flew in 1959. By November 2020, the PLAAF had as many as 231. The latest version is the H-6N, a heavily redesigned version capable of aerial refueling and carrying air-launched cruise missiles. According to the United States Department of Defense, this will give the PLAAF a long-range standoff offensive air capability with precision-guided munitions. Number 12. B-2, Mach 0.95. B-2 Spirit, also known as the stealth bomber, is an American heavy strategic bomber, featuring low observable stealth technology designed for penetrating dense anti-aircraft defenses. Designed during the Cold War, it is a flying wing design with a crew of two. The bomber is subsonic and can deploy both conventional and thermonuclear weapons, such as up to 8,500-pound class, 230 kilograms, Mk-82 JDAM GPS-guided bombs, or 16 2,400-pound, 1,100 kilograms, B-83 nuclear bombs. The B-2 is the only acknowledged aircraft that can carry large air-to-surface standoff weapons in a stealth configuration. Development started under the Advanced Technology Bomber (ATB) project during the Carter administration. Its expected performance was one of the president's reasons for the cancellation of the Mach 2-capable B-1A bomber. Number 13. Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk, Mach 0.92. The Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk is a semi-retired American single-seat, twin-engine stealth attack aircraft that was developed by Lockheed's secretive Skunk Works division and operated by the United States Air Force, USAF. It was the first operational aircraft to be designed around stealth technology. The F-117 was based on the HAB Blue technology demonstrator. The Nighthawk's maiden flight took place in 1981 at Groom Lake, Nevada, and the aircraft achieved initial operating capability status in 1983. The aircraft was shrouded in secrecy until it was revealed to the public in 1988. Of the 64 F-117s built, 59 were production versions, with the other 5 being prototypes. Number 14. Tupolev Tu-95 Bear, Mach 0.85. The Tupolev Tu-95 NATO reporting name, Bear, is a large, 4-engine turboprop-powered strategic bomber and missile platform. First flown in 1952, the Tu-95 entered service with the long-range aviation of the Soviet Air Forces in 1956, and is expected to serve the Russian aerospace forces until at least 2040. A development of the bomber for maritime patrol is designated Tu-142, while a passenger airliner derivative was called Tu-114. The aircraft has 4 Kuznetsov NK-12 engines with contrarotating propellers. It is the only propeller-powered strategic bomber still in operational use today. The Tu-95 is one of the loudest military aircraft, particularly because the tips of the propeller blades move faster than the speed of sound. Its distinctive swept-back wings are set at an angle of 35 degrees. The Tu-95 is unique as a propeller-driven aircraft with swept wings that has been built in large numbers. Number 15. Boeing B-52 Stratofortress. The Boeing B-52 Stratofortress is an American long-range, subsonic, jet-powered strategic bomber. The B-52 was designed and built by Boeing, which has continued to provide support and upgrades. It has been operated by the United States Air Force, USAF, since the 1950s. The bomber is capable of carrying up to 70,000 pounds, 32,000 kilograms, of weapons, and has a typical combat range of more than 8,800 miles, 14,080 kilometers, without aerial refueling. Beginning with the successful contract bid in June 1946, the B-52 design evolved from a straight-wing aircraft powered by 6 turboprop engines to the final prototype YB-52 with 8 turbojet engines and swept wings. The B-52 took its maiden flight in April 1952. Built to carry nuclear weapons for Cold War-era deterrence missions, the B-52 Stratofortress replaced the Convair B-36 Peacemaker. A veteran of several wars, the B-52 has dropped only conventional munitions in combat. The B-52's official name Stratofortress is rarely used. Informally, the aircraft has become commonly referred to as the Buff, Big Ugly Fat Fucker / Fella.